I was sipping coffee when the first photo slid across my feed, a perfect pre-wedding shot of my sister Haley, wrapped in the arms of her fiancé, Evan Miller. The caption read, "Can't wait for forever with this man." White roses, golden light, her smile as glossy as a magazine cover. I scrolled through the comments, our cousins, old classmates, even our childhood piano teacher tagged all of them. Everyone but me. Emily Grant. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some oversight in a sea of hashtags. But when I called Mom, she answered on the second ring, her voice tight as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "It's her day, Emily," she said. "Don't stir things up." Just like that. Calm, dismissive, surgical. I laughed, a sound that cracked halfway through. "Don't stir things up," she said, like my exclusion was something ordinary. Like being erased was polite. I sat back in my chair, staring out at the gray Seattle skyline. The drizzle on the window blurred the city lights into soft streaks, each one pulsing like a bruise. My hand tightened around the mug, the ceramic too hot to hold, but too grounding to let go. Haley's wedding. Of course it was a spectacle. I could picture it already, the designer gown, the floral arch, the drone footage hovering over Lake Tahoe. She was born for moments like that, spotlight moments, while I was built to stand in the shadows to hold the camera, to make sure the lighting was right. I scrolled again. Another post. This one from Mom. "So proud of our girl," she'd written under a photo of Haley holding a champagne glass, laughing mid-toast. No mention of me. Not even a heart emoji under my last project post when my firm won the preservation grant last month. Just silence. Familiar, hollow silence that had followed me all my life like an obedient dog that never needed a leash. My phone buzzed again. Jenna, my best friend since college. "Did you see the post? Please tell me you were invited." "Nope," I typed. "Guess I didn't make the cut." A pause, then, "What the hell, Em? That's insane." I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. That evening I drove home from work under steady rain. The streets shimmered with taillights' red reflections sliding like veins across wet asphalt. I turned off the radio halfway through an upbeat wedding ad. It felt like a cruel joke. My apartment waited the same way it always did, neat, quiet, anonymous. I dropped my bag, poured a glass of wine, and stood by the window watching the rain bleed down the glass. Somewhere across the city, Haley was probably trying on her gown, surrounded by applause and mirrors. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that I'd grown past the need for validation, but lies taste bitter when you drink them alone. When I was little, Mom used to say Haley had that spark. She said it in front of relatives, friends, strangers. She just lights up a room. And then, as if to balance it out, she'd turn to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And Emily keeps it all running smoothly. The responsible one, the calm one, the one who doesn't stir things up." That phrase again. It had haunted every conversation of my life. When Haley forgot to pay her credit card and used my name to apply for a loan, Mom had said it then too. "Don't stir things up, she's under pressure." When Dad missed Haley's graduation because he was fixing the porch, Mom told me, "Don't make it about you." Somehow, it always came back to that, to making myself smaller for the sake of peace. I walked to the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the room. On the counter sat a half-finished model from my latest restoration, project-a-scale version of an old downtown theater. I traced the miniature archway with my fingertip, the smooth wood cool under my skin. It reminded me why I loved architecture. Buildings didn't lie. They showed every crack, every line of stress. You could mend them, rebuild them, and they'd still carry their scars proudly. People weren't like that. Families certainly weren't. My phone buzzed again. This time it was the family group chat, Grant Family Forever. The name had always felt ironic. I hesitated before opening it. Photos filled the screen, Haley and Evan at their rehearsal dinner, surrounded by laughing relatives, faces glowing under twinkle lights. Uncle Dave, Aunt Mara. Even Dad, who hadn't texted me in weeks, looked radiant in his gray suit. Underneath, Mom had written so much joy in one room. My heart gave a slow, heavy thud. I typed, deleted, retyped, then left the chat altogether. Outside, the rain turned to mist. I pressed my forehead to the cool window pane. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was the accumulation of 1,000 small exclusions, the unspoken rule that Haley's happiness came first, and my feelings were collateral damage. Somewhere deep down, I'd always hoped it would change. That maybe one day Mom would call me first, or Haley would thank me for all the times I'd picked her up from her own disasters. But people rarely break habits that benefit them. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside, the city air damp and sharp. The rain had slowed to a fine drizzle enough to blur the neon reflections on the pavement. I walked aimlessly past the corner cafe, the bookstore, the park where we used to take family photos before everything became performative. My thoughts churned louder than the traffic. What kind of sister excludes you from her own wedding? What kind of mother defends it? By the time I reached the bridge overlooking the Sound, my anger had cooled into something quieter, heavier. The water below shimmered dark and restless. I pulled out my phone again, thumb hovering over Haley's page. The latest photo was of her and Evan on a boat, captioned "1 week to forever." I almost laughed. Forever had a way of arriving early in our family, and it never stayed. When I got back to my apartment, the answering machine light blinked. I pressed play. Mom's voice filled the room, syrupy and smooth. "Sweetheart, please don't make a big deal about this. You know how Haley is sensitive. She just wants her wedding to be joyful. Sensitive. That word again. It was the family's favorite shield. Translation, she gets to do what she wants, and you get to swallow it." I deleted the message before it finished the click of the button louder than I expected. I poured another glass of wine and sat on the couch. The city lights flickered through the blinds, painting stripes across the floor. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window, tired eyes, tight mouth, a face that looked far too composed for someone who'd just been erased from her own bloodline. I took a slow breath. Fine, I thought. Let her have her day. Let them all toast to a version of perfection that couldn't last. But as I set down my glass, my phone buzzed again. Another message in the group chat, this one from my cousin, "Can't wait for the wedding of the year." Attached was a short video of Haley practicing her first dance. Laughter in the background, someone cheering Mom's voice. Faint but unmistakable, "Our beautiful girl." I watched the clip twice, then a third time. The way Mom's tone softened, the way she leaned toward Haley, like the rest of the world didn't exist. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. I was done crying over them. Instead, I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it Family Notes. Inside, I started typing dates, messages, every small reminder of what they'd said and done. Not out of spite, but clarity. For the first time, I wanted to see it all written out, undeniable. When I finished, I sat back and exhaled. The rain outside had stopped completely, leaving the city still and expectant. Then, one last vibration on the table. A new message popped up: "Haley and Evan rehearsal dinner livestream. Join us." My stomach twisted, but I clicked it anyway. The video opened to music, laughter, clinking glasses. Everyone smiling. Everyone but me. I hovered over the screen for a moment, then closed it. The quiet that followed felt different this time, not emptiness, but space. Space to think, to breathe, to choose. I stared at my dim reflection in the glass and whispered to no one, "All right, Haley, have your perfect day." Then I smiled, a small, deliberate smile that felt like the start of something dangerous. Let's see how perfect it really is. The drive back to Bellevue was quieter than I remembered. Rain gathered on the windshield in silver streaks, the wipers scraping a rhythm that matched the hollow pulse in my chest. By the time I turned onto the old street, the one lined with trimmed hedges and 2 perfect mailboxes, my knuckles were white around the steering wheel. The Grant house still stood at the end of the cul-de-sac, like a shrine, pale yellow, siding a porch light glowing, even though it was still afternoon. It smelled like wet pine and nostalgia, two things that never mixed well. When I stepped inside, the scent hit me first. Soup simmering lemon cleaner, the faint trace of Mom's perfume. Everything looked the same except shinier, colder, as if she'd scrubbed the past right off the walls. Family photos lined the hallway. Haley, in a dozen poses, her smile rehearsed but radiant. High school graduation. College sorority. Her engagement shoot. Not one picture of me. I paused by the staircase, scanning the frames. It was like walking through a museum where I had never existed. My reflection wavered in the glass of her wedding portrait, distorted by light. I almost laughed. Even the house had chosen its favorite. Emily. Mom's voice floated from the kitchen, too casual, too careful. When she appeared, she wiped her hands on a towel and smiled like she hadn't erased me from her daughter's wedding guest list. "Well, this is a surprise," she said. Her tone carried the same melody it always did, sweet, layered with something sharp underneath. I forced a small smile. I called. "You didn't answer." She glanced toward the pot on the stove. "Oh, sweetheart, I've been so busy. You know how it is before a big event. You should have called first." "I did," I said, again, quieter this time. She gave a soft sigh, as if I were being unreasonable. "Well, you're here now." She turned back to her soup, stirring like it required her full attention. "I just don't want any tension before the big day. Haley's nervous enough as it is." There it was again, that word. Sensitive. The invisible force field that had shielded my sister her entire life. "She's nervous because she's getting married," I said evenly. "Not because I might show up." Mom stiffened. "Emily, please. I'm not in the mood for drama." Drama. The word landed like a bruise pressed too hard. I bit the inside of my cheek, tasting metal. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked. "About the invitations." Mom turned off the stove and faced me, her expression carefully neutral. "You've been so busy with work. I didn't want to pressure you." "Pressure me?" I let out a short laugh. "You didn't want me there." "That's not true," she said quickly, her tone rising in pitch. "You know how you and Haley can get. I just thought it would be easier." "For who?" I asked. "Her or you?" The silence that followed was answer enough. She smoothed the front of her blouse the way she did when words failed her. "This is supposed to be a happy occasion, Emily. Don't turn it into something it's not." "Right," I said softly. "Wouldn't want to ruin the photo ops." The sound of a car door outside cut through the tension. A moment later, Dad stepped in from the rain, shaking droplets from his jacket. He smelled of cedar and sawdust, familiar grounding. He said, half smiling, half guilty. "Didn't know you'd be here." "Guess that makes two of us," I said. He looked at Mom, then back at me. "Everything okay?" I waited for him to say more, to take my side, to show even a flicker of disagreement. But instead, he walked over and placed an arm around Mom's shoulders. "Let's not make today difficult," he said gently. I nodded slowly, the air thick between us. "Wouldn't dream of it." Mom gave him a grateful glance and went back to stirring her soup, as if the conversation had been neatly folded away like laundry in a drawer. I took a step back, scanning the room. On the dining table, a wedding planner's binder lay open, menus, color swatches, seating charts, ribbons. My eyes caught something, the printed guest list. I moved closer, my fingers brushing the pages. My name wasn't there. Mom noticed and reached out quickly, snapping the binder shut. "That's private," she said too fast. I froze. "You really went through with it?" I whispered. Her face softened for a moment, as if pity might fix what she'd broken. "Emily, please don't overreact. You know how much pressure Haley's under. She just wants her day to be perfect." I met her gaze. "Perfect means pretending I don't exist." Her mouth opened, then closed. The only sound was the spoon clinking against the pot again. It was always like this, noise instead of answers. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Let's all take a breath," he said. "No one meant to hurt anyone." I turned to him. "You knew, didn't you?" He looked at the floor. "It wasn't my decision, but you didn't stop it." He sighed, voice low. "You know how your mother is." That sentence, those 5 words, were his signature move. They ended every argument, erased every line. I felt something in me flicker, then go dark. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I do." I grabbed my coat from the chair. "I should go," Mom said sharply. "Don't walk away angry." "I'm not angry," I lied. "Just done." Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and still. I stepped onto the porch, breathing in the faint smell of roses from the garden. They were overgrown now, petals drooping like tired faces. I used to spend hours pruning them with Mom, careful not to cut too deep. Now they looked like everything else she touched, lovely from a distance, decaying up close. Behind me, I heard her phone ring. Through the half-open window, her voice drifted out. "Don't worry, Haley," she said softly. She stopped by, but I handled it. "She won't interfere." My hand froze on the railing. The words hung in the damp air, slicing clean through whatever was left of pretense. "She won't interfere." As if I were an inconvenience, a threat to be managed. I stayed still for a long moment, staring out at the quiet street. A child's laughter echoed faintly somewhere down the block, a sound too pure for this house. When I finally moved, it wasn't out of anger but something colder. Clarity. I walked to my car, my reflection ghosting in the window as I opened the door. My eyes looked unfamiliar, tired, sharper, older somehow. The same face, but with something missing. Maybe illusion. As I drove away, the streetlights flickered on one by one, their glow washing over the windshield. I thought about all the years I'd kept the peace, swallowing my words, fixing their mistakes, believing silence was loyalty. But silence only teaches people to forget you're there. The road blurred under the rain headlights, cutting through the dark like veins of light. I rolled down the window and let the cold air sting my face. At the stoplight, I remembered the therapist I'd seen once after the studio debacle. She'd said boundaries aren't betrayal, Emily. They're protection. At the time, I didn't believe her. Tonight, I understood. By the time I reached the bridge that overlooked the Sound, the rain had started again, soft and rhythmic. I pulled over, turned off the engine, and sat in the quiet. The water below shimmered in the dim light, restless and endless. My reflection in the windshield was a ghost, surrounded by motion. I whispered to it, barely audible, "They think I won't interfere." The corners of my mouth lifted, not quite a smile, something sharper, steadier. "They're right," I said, "until I do." The wipers clicked back on, sweeping the glass clean, and I drove into the dark, the sound of the rain following like a promise. I woke the next morning to a gray light seeping through the blinds and the sound of rain tapping against the window. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a string of notifications lighting up the screen, family group messages, wedding photos, comments, emojis. For a moment, I just stared, letting the silence between each buzz fill the room. I should have turned it off, but curiosity, or maybe habit, made me reach for it. The first thing I saw was Haley's face. She was radiant, draped in lace, standing beneath an arch of white roses. The caption read, "Can't wait to marry my best friend. Number Haley and Evan forever." Below it, the comments poured in like confetti. "Beautiful bride, fairy tale wedding. So happy for you both." Mom had left a row of heart emojis. Dad had written, "Our baby girl." I scrolled through the tagged names, recognizing cousins, family, friends, even Mrs. Harlow, our old babysitter. Everyone but me. A familiar tightness gathered in my chest. I'd spent years pretending these things didn't bother me, that being left out was normal. But the truth pressed harder this time. Maybe it was the finality of it, the proof that I wasn't part of their picture anymore. I set the phone down and went to the kitchen, filling the kettle with water just to have something to do. Steam rose slowly, curling into the air, and I caught my reflection in the window, a woman who'd stopped asking for explanations a long time ago. By noon, the drizzle had turned into a steady downpour. I worked through emails half-heartedly, but my focus kept drifting back to my phone. A new photo popped up, this one of the reception setup. Long tables draped in silk candles, glowing champagne flutes waiting. The caption, "The countdown begins." I scrolled again. One of Haley's friends had posted a story tagging everyone in the bridal party, laughing about last night's rehearsal dinner. I pressed play. The clip showed Haley clinking glasses with Mom and Evan, everyone smiling too wide. Then Mom leaned in toward the camera, her voice dripping with pride. "Tomorrow's going to be perfect. My Haley deserves nothing less." I paused the video at her face, the same look she'd worn at every milestone that wasn't mine. I could almost hear her saying it when Haley got into college, when she bought her first car, when she moved to New York for 2 months before getting homesick. That same gleam of maternal admiration, the one that never seemed to turn in my direction. The kettle whistled, breaking the trance. I poured the water over a tea bag, the scent of chamomile filling the small space. My laptop screen dimmed, casting the room in a softer light. Outside, the rain streaked the glass, blurring the world into shades of gray. I tried to focus on my breathing, slow, steady, deliberate. But beneath it was a pulse of something sharper. Not anger exactly. Something older. Worn and familiar. I opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo album I hadn't touched in years. The cover was worn at the edges, the pages yellowed slightly. Inside were pictures from birthdays, Christmases, graduations, snapshots of the same pattern repeating. Haley in the center glowing, me at the edge holding a cake, a card, a bouquet, something that made me useful. The last page was blank. I'd stopped printing photos after I left for college. Maybe I already knew there wouldn't be any worth keeping. The sound of my phone broke through the quiet again, a call this time. Mom. For a moment I just watched it ring, my thumb hovering over the screen. Finally I answered. "Emily," she said, voice tight and rehearsed. "Thank goodness. I was afraid you were avoiding me." "I wasn't," I said, though we both knew that wasn't true. "Well," she sighed, "I wanted to make sure you're okay. You seemed upset yesterday." I swallowed a bitter laugh. "You think?" Her tone sharpened. "Don't start, please. This week has been stressful enough." "Mom," I said carefully, "you didn't forget to invite me. You excluded me. There's a difference." Silence hummed between us, the kind that fills an entire room. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, but edged with warning. "It's Haley's day, Emily. She wanted something small and peaceful. You know how the two of you can get." There it was, the old refrain, smooth as a lullaby and just as numbing. "You mean she wanted me gone?" I said. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her pitying tone scraping against me like sandpaper. "You always read too much into things." "Funny," I said. "I thought reading was what you taught me to do." She let out a long breath. "I don't want this to turn into a fight. Promise me you won't make a scene. Let's just keep things calm." "I'm not the one who started the scene," I said, but she'd already shifted gears, her voice brightening artificially. "I have to go," she said quickly. "The florist's here. We'll talk later, all right?" The line clicked before I could respond. I stared at the phone, her words replaying in my head. "Promise me you won't make a scene." The irony almost made me laugh. My whole life had been about avoiding scenes, smoothing them over, cleaning up the messes, apologizing for things I didn't do. I'd been so quiet for so long that they'd mistaken my silence for contentment. By late afternoon, the rain eased into a mist. I put on my coat and stepped outside, walking aimlessly through the streets. The sky hung low and pale, the air cool enough to sting. Each breath felt like rinsing something raw inside me. I ended up at a small coffee shop on the corner of Pine and ate the kind that smelled like espresso and cinnamon. The barista recognized me from my morning visits and smiled politely. "Rough day?" she asked. "Something like that," I said. I took my coffee to the window seat and watched the people passing by, couples under shared umbrellas, teenagers laughing, a mother pushing a stroller. Everyone moving in their own small orbit, unaware of mine collapsing. Across the street, a billboard flashed an ad for a wedding venue in Oregon, all white roses and lake views. I couldn't escape it even here. I sipped my coffee, bitter and grounding. When I got home, the apartment felt emptier than usual. I turned on the lamp by the couch, its warm light spilling across the room. My phone buzzed again, this time a message from Jenna, my closest friend since college. "Jenna, Hey, just checking in. You okay? I saw the posts. Brutal. Me define okay. Jenna wanna come over? Or should I bring wine? Me no. I'm fine. Just tired. Jenna tired is code for about to spiral. Me not tonight. There was a pause before her final message. Jenna. You don't have to fix everything, Em. I stared at the text for a long time. Maybe that was the problem. I didn't know how to exist without fixing something. The thought lingered as I set the phone down and turned off the lights. The city outside buzzed faintly through the walls, a constant hum of movement and noise. Somewhere out there, Haley was celebrating, wrapped in champagne and applause, while I sat in the dark measuring the weight of being forgotten. But then another thought surfaced, quiet but insistent. Maybe being forgotten wasn't the worst thing. Maybe it was freedom in disguise. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, the kind of breath that hurts before it helps. If they wanted me invisible, I could give them exactly that for now. Still, part of me wondered what would happen if the spotlight ever turned the other way, if all those people who toasted my sister saw the truth beneath her glittering life. Secrets had a way of leaking, especially when they were buried under perfection. The rain began again, light at first, then harder, until it filled the silence completely. I pulled the blanket around my shoulders and whispered to no one. Let her have her perfect day. The world always catches up eventually. The sky over Seattle turned the color of wet slate the next morning, a dull gray that made everything look a little blurred around the edges. I woke early without meaning, to the kind of restlessness that doesn't come from lack of sleep but from something heavier pressing behind the ribs. My phone buzzed before I could reach for it, a text from Jenna. Jenna, I'm working the Lakeview wedding this weekend. You'll never guess who the clients are. I didn't have to. I typed back without thinking. Me, Haley, and Evan. 3 dots flickered, disappeared, then returned. Jenna, yeah, you okay? Me, define okay. A pause, then she sent a photo. It was the venue, an elegant outdoor setup near the lake, strung with lights and white drapery that glowed even in the cloudy daylight. The caption under it read, "The most anticipated wedding of the season." I stared at the image until the screen dimmed. The thought of my sister's perfect life rolling forward without a hitch used to sting. Now it just felt distant, like watching a movie you'd seen too many times. By mid-morning, I was at my desk, staring at a blank document that refused to turn into a project proposal. My mind kept drifting. I kept seeing Mom's face, the careful smile, the words she'd used like a knife wrapped in ribbon. She's sensitive. Don't make a scene. The phone rang. I knew the number before I picked up. Emily, Mom, said, her tone bright, brittle. I was just thinking about you. Were you? I asked. Well, of course. We haven't spoken since you dropped by. I just wanted to check in. You seemed upset. I was, I said, simply. She sighed like I was being unreasonable again. Sweetheart, I don't want tension between us. It's Haley's big week. Can't we all be happy for her? I think you've got that covered, I said. Looks like the whole family's thrilled. Mom ignored the edge in my voice. You should see the venue, it's magical. She deserves it after everything she's been through. I stared at the wall. Everything she's been through, I repeated. You mean all the things she caused? Her voice hardened. Don't be cruel, Emily. She's worked hard for this. You know she's been trying to rebuild. She's been trying to rebuild with my credit, I said before I could stop myself. Silence stretched. When she spoke again, her tone was icy. We're not rehashing that. It was a misunderstanding. You mean when she opened a studio in my name and vanished 8 months later? Enough, Mom snapped. That's in the past. For you, maybe, I said. Some of us are still paying it off. Her breathing sharpened through the receiver. You sound angry. I'm tired, I corrected. There's a difference. She lowered her voice, switching to that careful, coaxing tone she used when she wanted me back under her control. Please, Emily, don't let resentment ruin things. Family is forever. I let the words hang for a moment, tasting their hollowness. No, I said quietly. Love is supposed to be forever. Family is optional. Her sharp inhale told me I'd hit a nerve. "I don't know what's happened to you," she said. "You used to be so dependable." "I still am," I said. "Just not for you." She tried again, softer now. "At least call your sister. It would mean the world to her." I almost laughed. Did she say that a beat too long? Then she's nervous. "You know how she gets." "I do," I said. "She gets everything she wants." I hung up before she could answer. The rest of the day passed in fragments emails. I didn't answer dishes. I didn't wash thoughts. I couldn't quiet. I told myself to let it go, that some battles weren't worth fighting. But when night came, I couldn't shake the image of that wedding photo, the way Haley glowed, the way Mom smiled behind her like a director, admiring her own production. Around 8, my phone buzzed again. A message from Jenna. "Jenna, you need to see this." She sent another photo. My heart skipped once before I opened it. The picture showed Evan, my sister's fiancé, at a dimly lit bar. His hand rested on the waist of a woman I didn't recognize, her red dress, catching the light like a warning. The timestamp was 2 nights ago. Me, who's she? Jenna? No idea. But one of my coworkers said he's been here before. Same woman. I stared at the screen, the image blurring. For a long time I didn't move. The rain outside thickened, the city dissolving behind it. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. "Thank you," I texted back. I poured a glass of wine and sat on the couch, the phone lying face down on the table. The rain drummed harder against the windows. For years I'd been the one to protect Haley from her own mistakes, from Mom's favoritism, from everything that might tarnish the picture-perfect image. Now I had something that could burn it all down, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. I picked up the phone again, turning it over in my hand. Part of me wanted to send the photo straight to her to watch the facade crumble. Another part whispered that I didn't owe her that. By midnight, the decision still hadn't come. I stood at the window, watching lightning split the clouds above the bay. My reflection looked different in the glass, still me but sharper somehow. I whispered, "Maybe the universe keeps receipts." The next morning, the world felt strangely still. The storm had passed, but the sky remained heavy, holding its breath. I drove aimlessly for a while, ending up on the old road toward the lake. The closer I got, the more the landscape blurred with memory, summer picnics, Haley's laughter, Mom's endless instructions about posture and behavior. "Smile, Emily. Be kind, Emily. Let your sister shine." I parked by the waterfront and got out the wind, carrying the scent of wet pine. Across the lake, the wedding venue was already being decorated. White tents, strings of lights, catering vans lined up like soldiers. It looked beautiful, flawless. A lie wrapped in lace. A few people recognized me as I walked along the edge of the water. One of them, an old family friend, stopped me. "Emily, are you excited for the big day?" I forced a polite smile. "Thrilled," I said, then walked away before he could notice my voice cracking. By afternoon, my phone was a flood of wedding updates. Mom's latest post showed the rehearsal dinner, "So proud of our Haley," and Evan tomorrow's, "Going to be magic." The comments overflowed with praise. I scrolled through them until my vision blurred. That night, Jenna called again. "I'm serious, Em. Something's off. That guy's too smooth. My boss said he hit on one of the servers during setup." "Let him," I said, voice flat. "You're not going to tell Haley." "She made it clear she doesn't want me involved," I said. "Consider me uninvolved." Jenna hesitated. "You don't sound angry." "I'm not," I said. "I'm curious." "About what?" "How long perfection lasts before it rots." The line went quiet. I could hear her breathing. "You know," she said finally. "You sound like you're planning something." "Not yet," I said. "But maybe the world is." After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled faintly, far enough away to sound almost like laughter. The next morning would be her wedding day. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to stop a disaster. I was waiting to see one happen. The morning of the rehearsal dawned in slow motion. The rain had stopped, but the air felt swollen, the kind of stillness that comes before something breaks. I woke early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen counter staring at the small stack of mail I'd been ignoring for days. Bills, flyers, and one cream-colored envelope written in my mother's perfect cursive. My stomach tightened. I slit it open with a butter knife. Inside was an invitation I wasn't meant to receive, embossed heavy, the kind of paper that smelled expensive. The wedding of Haley Grant and Evan Carter, Lakeview Estate, June 21. Below it in faint gold lettering the words, "Family ceremony only." I ran my thumb over the edge of the paper until it tore. Family. My phone buzzed before I could throw it away. A call from Mom. I didn't answer. Then another. I silenced it and took my coffee to the window. From my apartment, the city stretched out like a map of lives I didn't belong to. I thought about all the times I'd chosen reason over pride, about how I'd swallowed my hurt to keep the family peace. But that peace had always been one-sided, and now it was unraveling in gold cursive. By 9, the voicemail icon blinked red. I pressed play. Mom's voice filled the room, sugary and strained. "Emily, sweetheart, I hope you got the invitation. I know things have been tense, but Haley insisted you should have the option. She really does love you, you know. We all do. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Let's just celebrate as a family." The message clicked off, leaving only static. I stared at the phone until my reflection blurred in the black screen. Celebrate. The word felt obscene. The day passed in small fragments, laundry emails pretending to work. Every hour or so, another picture appeared online. Haley laughing with her bridesmaids. Mom arranging flowers. Evan's family arriving at the lake, their smiles smooth and practiced. Each photo was a reminder that their world spun perfectly fine without me. By afternoon, I'd had enough. I grabbed my keys and drove. The road to Lakeview wound through pine trees and silence, the kind of silence that listens back. Halfway there, I almost turned around, but something kept me going, a need to see the lie up close. When I reached the estate, gate security stood by the entrance, polite but firm. "Private event, ma'am," one of them said. "I know," I replied. "I'm family." He checked his list, then looked up. "Your name's not here." "I'm aware." I gave him a tight smile and reversed the car. My heart should have hurt, but instead there was an odd calm. I parked a few miles down the road near the overlook. From there, I could see the lake glinting under the pale sun, the tents spread out like white scars against the green. Music drifted faintly through the air, violins, laughter, perfection. I stayed until dusk, watching the lights come on one by one. Then I drove home through a thin drizzle, headlights slicing through the wet dark. My phone rang again just as I reached the city limits. "Mom." Against my better judgment, I answered. "Emily," she said, relief, rushing out like breath she'd been holding. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. I saw the venue," I said. "It's beautiful. You drove out there." Her voice sharpened. "Emily, that's—" "Don't worry," I interrupted. "I didn't go inside. Wouldn't want to ruin the photos." She went quiet for a beat, then softened her tone. "Please don't say things like that. Tomorrow's important for all of us." "All of us," I said. "Or just her—" "Stop this, Mom," said her voice, trembling between command and plea. "You know Haley's been fragile since the engagement. You showing up uninvited would upset her." I almost laughed. "You mean it would remind her I exist?" "Emily," she said, voice cracking. "Don't make this about you." That line broke something I hadn't realized was still holding. "You did that already," I said quietly. "When you took me out of every picture?" She tried to backtrack, to smooth it over, but I was done listening. "I hope it's everything she wants," I said, and hung up. The phone rang again immediately, then stopped. I turned it off and poured a glass of wine. The city outside my window pulsed with neon, oblivious. Somewhere down south, they were rehearsing vows under fairy lights, saying words like forever and trust. By midnight, I couldn't sleep. The rain started again, heavier now, and I stood at the window watching it slide down the glass. My reflection looked calm, almost detached. Maybe that was the scariest part. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns hot and quick, but this felt colder, steadier, like the eye of a storm waiting to move. Then my phone buzzed once more, a text from Jenna. Jenna, something happened tonight. You should sit down before I tell you. Me. What happened? A few seconds passed before the next message arrived, followed by a photo. It was blurry, clearly taken in a rush. Evans, still in his tuxedo, stood at the bar inside the Lakeview Pavilion. His arm was around a woman, the same woman from before, her red dress unmistakable even under low light. Haley was nowhere in sight. Jenna, he left right after the toasts. No one knows where he went. Someone saw him with her outside the hotel. I stared at the screen, the edges of the image shimmering. The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if the world had shifted just enough for gravity to feel different. Me, does Haley know Jenna? Not yet. But people are whispering. It's going to get out. The thunder rolled outside, distant but closing in. I set the phone down carefully and sat on the couch. The ticking of the clock grew louder, syncing with the pulse in my throat. For a long time I said nothing. Then softly I whispered, "She's about to learn what it feels like to be blindsided." The rain thickened, drumming against the windows like applause. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, listening to it. The city beyond blurred into streaks of silver and shadow. I thought of Mom's voice, sweet and false, saying, "Don't make this about you." Maybe I finally would. When I finally went to bed, I left my phone face down on the nightstand. The screen kept lighting up with new messages, more photos, rumors spreading like wildfire. I didn't read them. Outside, thunder cracked again, sharp and final. Somewhere by the lake, a perfect wedding was already falling apart, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like cleaning up the mess. The wedding day began with a quiet kind of gray, the kind that settles over the city like a warning. I woke without an alarm, the rain whispering against the window, the air thick with something that felt like waiting. My phone was already buzzing, notifications piling up like static. I ignored them at first, made coffee, tried to convince myself that today was just another Saturday. But the truth sat heavy in my chest. By the time I finally picked up the phone, the storm had already started, just not the one outside. Social media was a minefield of posts tagged at Lakeview Estate. Pictures of white roses, silk tables, the bridesmaids laughing under umbrellas. Then a headline from a local gossip account caught my eye: Grant Carter wedding, the event of the season. I scrolled through image after image until my thumb stopped on one. Haley radiant in her lace gown, standing beneath an arch of flowers. Evan at her side, smiling like a man who'd never lied. I should have felt something: grief, anger, envy, but all I felt was distance, as if I were watching a stranger's story unfold. I sipped my coffee and whispered to no one, "Let it be perfect. Just this once." The rain outside shifted to a drizzle, the lights soft and uncertain. I turned on the TV for background noise and nearly dropped my mug. The local news channel had switched to a live segment, "Good Morning from Lakeview Estate," where the much-anticipated wedding of social media influencer Haley Grant is underway. The camera panned over the venue, white tents gleaming by the lake, the guests arriving in glittering waves. I recognized faces I hadn't seen in years, cousins, old family friends, even Mom's bridge club, all smiles and umbrellas. It was beautiful, a perfect lie. I muted the TV and leaned against the counter. For a moment, everything was still. Then the picture on the screen jerked, the camera wobbling. A muffled shout. Someone off-screen gasped. The reporter's voice trembled. "There seems to be some kind of commotion near the reception tent." My stomach dropped. The feed cut to the anchor back in the studio, her smile frozen and uneasy. "We'll update you as the situation develops." The silence that followed felt too loud. My phone buzzed again. "Jenna. Jenna, Emily, are you watching this? Something's happening at the wedding." Before I could reply, another message came through. "Jenna, check Twitter. It's everywhere." My fingers moved before I could think. I opened the app and there it was, The first photo that would explode across every timeline within minutes. Haley mid-scream, her manicured hand tangled in the hair of a woman I didn't recognize. Evan in the background, his face twisted, one hand reaching to pull her away. Champagne glasses shattered on the floor, petals scattered like confetti in a nightmare. The caption read, "Bride loses it at her own wedding reception." My breath caught. I scrolled, each post worse than the last. A 30-second video clip showed the chaos, guests frozen in shock. Mom's voice faint in the background crying, "Stop it, Haley, please." Another angle caught Evan shouting something unintelligible, his face flushed, his tie half untied. It didn't look like a misunderstanding. It looked like collapse. I stood perfectly still, the sound of the rain muffled by my heartbeat. For years, Haley had built her life on image, curated smiles, golden filters, borrowed light. And now, in front of hundreds, the mask had cracked wide open. The phone rang again. "Mom." I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. Her voice was hysteria wrapped in sugar. "Emily, thank God. Where are you?" "At home," I said evenly. "You need to come," she cried. "It's a disaster. Haley's hurt. Everything's ruined. The police are here, the reporters. Oh God, Emily, you have to help us." I closed my eyes. "Help you do what? Spin it." Her voice wavered. "Don't be cruel. This is your sister." "She's the bride who didn't invite me," I said. "Remember, she needs her family." "She had them," I said softly. "Now she has the truth." "Emily," Mom begged. "Please, she's bleeding." He pulled her hair so hard. "Call an ambulance," I said flatly. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "You're the only one who can fix this. You always know what to do." I looked at my reflection in the dark window, my own face staring back calm and unfamiliar. "Not this time," I said, and hung up. For a few seconds I just stood there, the quiet ringing in my ears louder than any sound. Then I poured another cup of coffee. The rain outside turned steady again, the sky a dull, endless gray. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all variations of the same question. "Is it true? What happened? Do you know anything?" I didn't answer. Instead, I scrolled through the growing flood of headlines. "Bride freaks out during ceremony." "Viral wedding meltdown. Guests in shock as chaos unfolds." Each one made me feel both heavier and lighter at once. By evening, there were already memes. Clips slowed down, captions twisted into jokes. I should have felt pity, but pity was too close to the person I used to be, the one who made excuses for everyone else's disasters. Now I just felt detached, like I was finally watching the movie from the right distance. A knock at the door startled me. It was Jenna, rain-soaked, breathless, her hair sticking to her face. She didn't wait for an invitation, just walked in and collapsed onto the couch. "It's bad," she said, clutching her phone. "Really bad. The video's viral, half the city's seen it." She pressed play. The clip was clearer this time. It started with Haley laughing near the dessert table, champagne in hand. Then someone whispered something in her ear. She turned, face twisting, and lunged. The camera shook as guests screamed. Evan grabbed her shoulders, but she pushed him off. A woman's voice shouted, "You ruined my life," and then the chaos. I couldn't look away. "They're saying she found out about Evan, and that woman," Jenna said softly. Apparently the mother-in-law made a comment about his taste in women, and Haley snapped. I didn't respond. The pieces fit together too neatly. The bar photo, the whispers, the timing. Jenna glanced at me. "You okay?" "I think so," I said. "Maybe for the first time." She studied my face. "You don't sound shocked." "I'm not," I said. "I just didn't expect karma to have such good timing." Jenna exhaled, half a laugh, half disbelief. "You're scary sometimes, you know that." "Not scary," I said, staring at the dark window. "Just done pretending." The two of us sat there in silence, the rain tapping against the glass. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, fading into the city hum. Later that night, when Jenna left, I stood by the window again, watching the streetlights shimmer in the puddles below. My phone vibrated one last time, a voicemail from Dad. His voice was low, tired. "She's at the hospital. Concussion. They're keeping her overnight. She's asking for you." I didn't call back. I turned off my phone and whispered to the empty room, "She'll survive. She always does." The rain began again, harder now, washing against the windows like applause that wouldn't end. I poured one last cup of coffee and sat down, letting the silence wrap around me. For years, I'd been the fixer, the reasonable one, the quiet shadow orbiting their chaos. But tonight, I wasn't the cleanup crew. I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was the witness. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt like the storm itself. The morning after the wedding disaster, the world seemed quieter but heavier, as if even the air was ashamed. The rain had stopped, but the sky was a dull, washed-out gray that matched the headlines flooding my phone. "Bride's meltdown goes viral. Haley Grant attacks groom's mother during reception." Every post carried the same photo: Haley's hand tangled in someone's hair, her face contorted in rage. By the time I'd made coffee, 3 different relatives had called, and a 4th sent a message that said, "Your poor mother. You must be heartbroken." I wasn't. I was strangely calm, like the silence that comes after thunder. At 9 o'clock, my phone lit up again. "Mom?" I watched it buzz across the counter until it stopped, then started again. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "Emily," she said, her voice trembling, "thank God. You saw what happened." "Yes," I said. Her breath hitched. "It's awful. The police were there, the reporters. It's a nightmare. Haley's refusing to talk to anyone. She won't eat. She won't sleep. She keeps crying, saying she's ruined everything. I don't know what to do." "You could start by telling the truth," I said. "Emily, please," she said, her tone shifting into the careful kind she used when she wanted something. "I'm not calling to argue. We just need you right now. Haley needs you. You've always been the strong one." I closed my eyes. The phrase echoed like a curse. "The strong one," I repeated. "That's what you call me when you need something." Her voice softened further, almost a whisper. "Don't be cruel. I know you're hurt, but we can't afford to fall apart now. People are watching." "People have always been watching," I said. "You just cared more about what they thought than what I felt." "Sweetheart," she said, and I could hear her swallow. "Your sister is fragile. She's 30, I interrupted, "and she's been fragile since she was 5. "Don't make this about you," Mom said sharply. "It already is," I said. "You made it that way when you decided I didn't belong in this family unless I was fixing it." The silence stretched until I could hear her breathing through the lines, slow and deliberate. "I'm asking you," she said finally, "please come home. Let's talk this through. The reporters are hounding us. We need a united front." "A front," I said. "That's all we've ever been." I hung up before she could answer. By noon, the news cycle had already moved from shock to speculation. Evan's family had released a statement calling it a private emotional incident. The mother-in-law was reportedly shaken but recovering. Haley's name was everywhere: photos, clips, hashtags. I scrolled through it all without feeling anything except a faint, unfamiliar relief. For once, the world could see the cracks I'd been patching my entire life. A knock on my door made me flinch. When I opened it, Dad stood there holding his hat, like it might shield him from whatever waited inside. He looked smaller than I remembered, his shoulders slumped under the weight of too many apologies. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He sat on the edge of the couch, the same way he used to sit when I was little, and he'd been caught breaking a promise. "Your mother's losing it," he said quietly. "She hasn't eaten since last night. Haley's not answering her calls. I thought maybe you'd talk to them." "I have nothing to say," I said. He rubbed his hands together, staring down. "You know she didn't mean to hurt you." "That's the problem," I said. "She never means to. She just does," he sighed. "You're both my daughters. I can't take sides." "You already did," I said. "Every time you stood there and let her do what she does, best pretend love is control." He flinched but said nothing. The silence stretched between us like old wallpaper, thin, cracking, but impossible to peel off completely. Finally, he stood. "She's coming by later. Don't shut her out, okay?" She's trying. When the door closed behind him, the quiet returned heavier than before. It was late afternoon when Mom showed up. She didn't knock, just opened the door with her spare key like she always had, stepping inside, as if she still owned the space between us. She was dressed impeccably, makeup flawless, but her eyes were red around the edges. In her hands she held a glass dish. "I brought lasagna," she said softly. "You always liked my lasagna." The smell filled the apartment, warm, comforting, manipulative. I didn't invite her to sit, but she did anyway, placing the dish on the counter like an offering. "Mom," I said, "what do you want?" "I want us to fix this," she said, her voice trembling. "Haley's at home a mess." Reporters outside, neighbors whispering. "We need to show we're together." "You mean you need me to clean up your mess?" I said. Her lips tightened. "Don't twist my words. You know this family has been through enough." "This family," I said slowly, "has been through nothing. I've been through it. I've been the one holding everything up while you pretended it was fine." She stood abruptly, color rising in her cheeks. "You're making this harder than it has to be. You've always been dramatic." I laughed. That's funny, coming from the woman who staged sympathy like it was an art form. Her eyes flashed. "Don't talk to me that way. After everything I've done for you, everything you've done for me," I said, stepping closer. "Like erasing me from my own sister's wedding, or using my name to get her studio off the ground. Which part am I supposed to thank you for?" Her voice broke. "You're stronger than she is, Emily. You can handle disappointment. She can't." I shook my head. "That's not a compliment, Mom. That's an excuse." She blinked, fast tears smudging her mascara. "I don't want to fight." "Then stop pretending this is about saving Haley. You're saving face." Her jaw clenched. "You're punishing me." "No," I said softly. "I'm protecting myself." For the first time in my life she looked uncertain. She took a shaky breath and tried to smile. "You'll regret this. Family is all that matters in the end." "Then, I guess I'm lucky," I said, walking to the door. I stopped mistaking guilt for family a long time ago. Her face crumpled, and for a brief moment I saw something almost human behind the performance, fear maybe, or recognition. Then she turned, gathering her purse with shaking hands, and left without another word. The door clicked shut, and I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The lasagna sat cooling on the counter, untouched. It smelled like old memories, comfort that came with strings attached. As the evening light dimmed, I stood by the window watching the first flickers of city lights appear. My phone buzzed again. Jenna. Jenna, she tried, didn't she? Me. Of course. Jenna, did you say no? Me, finally. Her reply came almost instantly. Good. You don't owe them cleanup duty anymore. I smiled faintly, typing back. Sometimes doing nothing feels louder than screaming. The city hummed below, indifferent and alive. I poured myself a glass of wine, turned off my phone, and sat in the silence. For the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Outside, the rain began again, soft at first, then steadier. I opened the window and let the cool air brush my face. Mom's voice echoed faintly in my mind. You're stronger than she is. She meant it as manipulation. Tonight, it finally sounded like truth. I leaned back, closing my eyes, the steady rhythm of rain against the glass, almost like applause. For the first time, silence didn't mean surrender. It meant control. The knock came just after sunset. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I thought I imagined it. The second knock was louder, slower, deliberate. When I opened the door, Dad stood there, rain, clinging to his jacket, his hat dripping onto the mat. He looked older than I, remembered smaller somehow, like the years had folded him inward. Can I come in? He asked, voice low. I stepped aside. He walked in, taking off his hat, twisting it in his hands. The smell of wet pine followed him. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. You look tired, he said finally. I am, I replied. What's going on? He hesitated. Your mother's not doing well. She's... Not sleeping. Haley's been hiding from reporters. Everything's falling apart. I folded my arms. So you came to ask me to fix it? He winced. No, well, yes. Not just that. Dad, I said softly. What do you need? He met my eyes for the first time and I saw something there. Shame, maybe, or fear. The bank called, he said. About the house. I waited. They're threatening foreclosure. Your mother's been behind on payments for months. My pulse picked up. What payments? He rubbed the back of his neck. We refinanced last year. The bills have been hard to keep up with after Haley's wedding. I froze. You refinanced? He nodded. You mean took out another loan? He hesitated, then said, We didn't have a choice. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Did you use my name again? He didn't answer. His silence was confirmation enough. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Unbelievable. Emily, he said, holding up his hands, we were desperate. Your mother said it would be temporary. Temporary, I repeated. How temporary is identity theft? He flinched. Don't say it like that. How else should I say it? I snapped. You forged my name, took money under it, and never told me. What am I supposed to call that? He looked down at the floor. We were trying to save the house. The house? You didn't even invite me to anymore. He opened his mouth, closed it again. You don't understand. It's been hard since your mother's health. Don't, I said sharply. Don't use her health as an excuse. You've both been doing this for years. Breaking things, then handing me the broom. His shoulders slumped. I thought you'd understand. That's what you always say, I said. That's what you said when Haley wrecked my car, when you borrowed my savings, when you needed my credit score to help the family business. You thought I'd understand because I always did. He sat down on the couch, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. We didn't mean for it to go this far. I stared at him. You didn't mean to get caught. He lifted his head. We planned to pay it back. With what Dad good intentions? He didn't answer. The silence was thick and sour. I turned away, pacing toward the window. The city lights blurred in the rain outside. How much? I asked finally. He hesitated. 180,000. The number landed like a slap. Jesus. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. I brought everything we have. The statements, the receipts. I took it from him, unfolding the damp pages. There it was, my name printed neatly at the bottom of every form beside a shaky signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. You forged it, I said quietly. He rubbed his face. Your mother thought you'd forgive us. I stared at him for a long moment. Tell her this time she's wrong. He stood, hat twisting in his hands again. I'll tell her you're angry. I'm past angry. What does that mean? It means I'm done. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in his face softened. I know we failed you, he said, but don't destroy us. I met his gaze steady. You did that yourselves. When he left, the apartment felt colder. The rain picked up, tapping against the glass like a restless thought. I set the envelope on the kitchen table and stared at it. Part of me wanted to burn it. The other part wanted to frame it, proof that I wasn't crazy all those years I'd felt used. I poured a drink instead. The whiskey burned sharp and clean. Then I sat down, unfolded every page, and began reading. Each line was a betrayal in ink. My name scrawled beside numbers I'd never seen, dates that matched the months Mom claimed she didn't want to bother me. I took out my old laptop and started cross-checking. The deeper I went, the clearer the pattern became. Transfers, withdrawals, payments marked utilities, insurance, wedding expenses. My account had been drained quietly, month by month, under the disguise of helping. By midnight, my head ached, but the anger was gone. What replaced it was colder, focused. I organized the documents into piles: statements, contracts, bank records. I labeled a folder in bold letters, evidence. The word looked strange under the lamplight, like it belonged to someone stronger. I scrolled through old emails, searching for the first clue I'd missed. There it was, an auto notification from Donovan Mortgage Services dated 8 months ago, thanking me for my continued partnership. I'd ignored it at the time, assuming it was spam. I clicked it open now, staring at the line that said refinance complete, co-applicant Emily Grant. I read it again and again. They hadn't just borrowed my name, they'd built their foundation on it. A hollow laugh escaped my throat. "You wanted me to save the family," I whispered. "Now I will." The next morning I printed everything, every receipt, every signature, every trace of proof. The sound of the printer hummed like resolve. I slid the stack into a folder, grabbed my phone, and opened my browser. Financial Exploitation Attorney Seattle 1 typed. Hundreds of names appeared, but one caught my eye. Michael Cross Family Financial Litigation. I clicked the website. His biography was short, direct, specializing in family fraud, inheritance disputes, and identity misuse. Perfect. I picked up the phone before I could second-guess it. The line rang twice before a calm voice answered Michael Cross's office. "How can I help you?" "My name's Emily Grant," I said. "I need to talk to someone about a family matter. A legal one." The receptionist paused, her tone professional but kind. "Can you tell me a little more?" "My parents took out a loan under my name," I said. "And I have the proof." There was a quiet intake of breath. "I can fit you in for a consultation tomorrow at 9. Does that work?" "Yes," I said. After hanging up, I leaned back in the chair, staring at the folder. Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds were beginning to thin, a faint stripe of light breaking through the gray. For the first time in weeks, my breathing felt even. I poured another glass of whiskey, took a slow sip, and whispered to the empty room, "You taught me to keep things together. Now I'll show you what it looks like when they finally fall apart." The folder sat on the table edges, sharp and golden in the morning light. Evidence. Truth. And maybe finally justice. The next morning smelled like wet concrete and fresh beginnings. I woke before my alarm, nerves humming under my skin. Outside, Seattle was still half asleep, the streets shining from last night's rain. I dressed in quiet motions, black slacks, a gray sweater, hair pulled back. I didn't want to look angry. I wanted to look like someone who finally understood her worth. The cafe where I was meeting Michael Cross sat on the corner of 5th, an alder tucked between a law firm and a bookstore. The place smelled of espresso and inked paper. He was already there when I arrived, early 50s, silver streaks in his dark hair, a posture that spoke of control. He stood when he saw me, extending a firm hand. "Miss Grant," he said, his voice low but steady. "It's good to finally meet you." I sat down, trying to hide the faint tremor in my fingers. "Thank you for seeing me so quickly." "That's what I'm here for," he said, opening a small leather notebook. "Why don't you start from the beginning?" So I did. I told him everything. The family manipulation, the years of being the strong one, the forged documents, the loan, the discovery that my parents had built their survival on my name. His pen moved swiftly, but his eyes never left me. He didn't interrupt, didn't pity me. Just listened. When I finally stopped, the words hung heavy between us. The clinking of coffee cups in the background sounded almost too cheerful. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You've been the family accountant, therapist, and safety net for years," he said. "But this goes far beyond obligation. This is fraud." The words sounded harsh in the air, sharp and cold. I nodded. "I know." He tapped his pen against the notebook. "Do you have evidence?" I reached into my bag and slid the folder across the table. "Everything. Bank statements, receipts, forged signatures, emails from the mortgage company." He opened it carefully, scanning the pages. "You're thorough," he said. "I'm an architect," I replied. "I build things that don't fall apart." That made him smile. "Good. Because building a case like this takes precision." He flipped through a few pages, nodding slowly. "They created a trail. Smart, but not smart enough." "What do we do next?" I asked. He looked up, eyes sharp. "We file a claim for financial exploitation. Oregon law has clear protections against what they did. We'll request a forensic review of these documents and push for full restitution. Depending on what the investigation finds, there could also be criminal implications. My stomach tightened. Criminal, yes, he said. Forgery is a felony. But that's not your focus right now. Your job is to tell the truth and let me handle the rest. I stared down at the folder, my name printed across every page like a brand. They're my parents, I whispered. I never thought I'd need a lawyer against my own family. Michael's voice softened. You didn't choose this. They did. I nodded, the truth landing quietly, heavy but clean. He took a sip of his coffee. Before we go further, you need to understand something. Once this starts, there's no going back. This isn't a fight you can walk away from halfway through. I'm not walking away, I said. Not anymore. Good, he said, closing the notebook. Then we start today. We spent the next hour outlining the steps. He explained how the filings worked, what to expect from court proceedings, how my parents would likely deny everything at first. I took notes, steady and precise, though part of me floated somewhere above the conversation, watching a version of myself I didn't quite recognize, someone who was no longer trying to earn forgiveness. When he finished, he looked at me curiously. How are you feeling? Strange, I said honestly. Like I just exhaled after holding my breath for 34 years. He smiled faintly. That's a good start. As we stood to leave, he placed a card on the table. You'll get an email tonight with the initial claim draft. Review it carefully before signing. Once you do, we file within 24 hours. I tucked the card into my bag. Thank you, he nodded. And Emily, don't engage with them. No calls, no texts. Silence is your shield now. Outside, the rain had started again, thin but insistent. I walked to my car, the folder pressed against my chest. The air smelled like something clean, like change. That evening, the email arrived exactly when he said it would. I read through the document line by line, my eyes tracing every clause: financial exploitation by immediate family identity fraud, unlawful signing of loan documents. My name appeared in the header beside words I never imagined seeing next to it. Plaintiff. It didn't feel cruel. It felt right. I clicked sign and closed the laptop. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to make me uneasy. Now it felt like control. I poured a glass of water and stood by the window watching lights flicker across the wet streets. The world was moving forward, unaware that one family's secret was about to be dragged into the open. At 10:30, my phone buzzed, a message from Michael. Michael filed successfully. Case #2 DG. They'll be served within a week. I stared at the screen, heart steady. Me, thank you. Michael, get some rest. You'll need it. I didn't sleep right away. I walked around the apartment, the rhythm of my footsteps echoing softly against the wood floor. Every surface seemed sharper, more real. For years I'd been invisible in my own story. Tonight I had proof I existed. At midnight, curiosity pulled me toward the old box of family photos in the closet. I opened it, carefully lifting the top layer of glossy memories. Weddings, holidays, vacations, smiles so wide they almost hurt to look at. I flipped through until I found the one I was searching for, a photo from when I was 10. Haley stood in front holding a birthday cake, while I stood behind her, half-cropped, holding a towel to clean up the frosting she'd smeared on the floor. Mom's handwriting on the back read Haley's big day. Nothing about me. I stared at it for a long time before slipping it into the folder with the legal documents. Evidence, too, in its own way. Outside, thunder rolled distantly across the city. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, the glow from the window casting faint shadows across the table. The folder sat there, closed but alive. I thought of Mom's voice saying, "You're stronger than she is. You can handle it." She was right, but not in the way she meant. The next morning I woke before dawn. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and gleaming. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, thin gold light spilling across the counter. My phone buzzed again, an alert from Michael. Subject: confirmation of service scheduled. Body: The documents will be delivered to Margaret and Robert Grant at their residence tomorrow morning. Prepare yourself. Once this starts, everything changes. I read it twice, then closed the email. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of change. I poured coffee, sat by the window, and whispered, "Let it change." The city stirred below, unaware. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed through the gray. It sounded like a beginning. The manila envelope was heavier than I expected. Michael slid it across the cafe table between us without a word. The rain outside blurred the window, streaking the city into soft shapes of gray and gold. I stared at the envelope for a moment before touching it. "You sure you want to open it here?" he asked quietly. "I've waited long enough," I said. The paper rasped beneath my fingers as I tore it open. Inside were neatly clipped documents, all stamped confidential. The first page was a spreadsheet, dates, amounts, account numbers. Michael leaned forward, pointing to a column with his pen. "These are your transfers. Every one of them over the last 8 years. I scanned the list, each line a small betrayal. 8 years of help, every payment labeled household support, loan repayment, or utilities. The numbers blurred until my stomach turned. He flipped to the next page. "Now here's where it gets worse. Bank statements, check images, and then one line highlighted in yellow. Family Trust Reserve." "What is that?" I asked. "A secondary account under your mother's name," he said. "It's where most of your transfers ended up. They disguised it as a household fund. But look closer." I followed his finger across the page. Mortgage payments, luxury store purchases, travel bookings, thousands spent at boutiques and resorts. My voice came out flat. "They used my money for vacations," he nodded grimly. "And to pay down a loan you didn't know existed. A home equity refinance from 2023, $180,000. My pulse quickened. The one they forged my name for, the same one. He turned another page. "And it gets worse. That loan's repayments line up exactly with the money you sent each month." I swallowed hard. "So I was paying their debt." Michael's eyes softened. "Without your knowledge, yes. It's classic familial exploitation. They knew your generosity would cover the gaps. They built a system around it." I pushed the papers away, nausea rising. It's so deliberate." "Yes," he said. "And deliberate means prosecutable." He flipped to another document, a photocopy of a property transfer. The header read, "Transfer of property, Grant Family Trust. My mother's name, my father's, and then Haley's. She's listed as co-trustee and eventual beneficiary," he said. "Your parents quietly transferred ownership last year. Through an attorney in Bellevue." I stared at the paper, unable to breathe. "They gave her the house," Michael nodded. "While you were paying for it." The cafe noise faded around me. Somewhere, a coffee grinder roared. Laughter burst at another table, but it felt distant, unreal. All I could hear was my heartbeat, steady and furious. "So they took my money," I said slowly, "and made sure I'd never see a cent of it back." "Exactly," he said. My throat tightened. "How do you live with yourself after doing something like that to your own daughter?" Michael didn't answer. He didn't have to. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small USB drive. "There's more," he said. "We found this in your parents' lawyer's archive. Labeled meeting, Jan 2023. I think you should hear it." He plugged it into his laptop and pressed play. At first, there was background noise, clinking glasses, muffled voices. Then a familiar tone cut through. My mother's voice. Calm, certain. "If Emily ever finds out," she said, "we'll tell her it was a misunderstanding. She won't fight us. She never does." I froze. There was laughter in the background, then Haley's voice, lighter, almost smug. "She's too responsible to make a scene. That's the beauty of it." Michael paused the recording. The sound of rain filled the silence between us. "That's intent," he said softly. "It's everything we need." I sat back, my pulse hammering. "She really said that?" He nodded. "You have 2 options now. We file the fraud suit as planned, or we escalate it. Seek full restitution and property reversal." I stared at the USB drive. A small, ordinary piece of plastic that held 8 years of deception. "Let's escalate," I said. Michael smiled faintly, not with satisfaction, but with respect. "I thought you'd say that." He handed me a pen. "Then, let's make it official." My signature bled across the page in neat, deliberate strokes. When I was done, he leaned back. "I'll file the amended claim in the morning. Once they're served, they'll have 21 days to respond. And Emily, when they call and they don't answer." "I won't," I said. He gave me a long look. "This is going to get ugly, but it's not your job to protect them from the consequences." Outside, the rain had stopped. The city glowed wet and reflective neon lights pooling in the pavement. "Ugly," I said quietly. "They already made it ugly." Michael nodded. "Then let the truth clean it." I left the cafe and walked toward my car, the folder tucked under my arm. The sky was breaking open, streaks of gold piercing through gray. My reflection in the puddles looked like someone I didn't know, a woman who'd finally stopped apologizing for her strength. When I got home, the apartment was dim, except for the glow of the streetlight outside. I placed the USB drive on my kitchen table beside the documents. Evidence of everything I'd ignored, everything I'd forgiven. My phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. "Unknown Emily, it's Aunt Sarah. Call me. Your father isn't well. He left something for you." I stared at the message, pulse quickening. Aunt Sarah had always been the quiet one, the only relative who ever looked at me like she actually saw me. If she was reaching out now, it meant something important. I typed back, "I'll call in the morning." But I didn't wait that long. By dawn, I was already on the road, the envelope of documents riding shotgun beside me. The highway stretched out slick and silver under the first light of day. The mountains in the distance were dusted, with fog rising like ghosts over the city. I thought about the recording. My mother's laugh, Haley's smug confidence, the casual cruelty of people who'd mistaken my silence for weakness. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "You wanted to see how strong I was," I whispered. "Now you will." When I reached Aunt Sarah's house, she was waiting on the porch, a mug of coffee steaming in her hands. Her expression softened when she saw me. "You look tired," she said. "I am," I said. She led me inside her home, warm and filled with the smell of cinnamon and cedar. On the dining table sat a small metal box, the kind used for keeping deeds or wills. "He gave it to me a year ago," she said. "Told me not to open it unless things ever went bad. Guess he knew this day would come." My chest tightened. "What's inside?" She pushed the box toward me. "You tell me." The lock clicked open easily. Inside were papers, letters, bank slips, and a flash drive labeled "For Emily." My hands shook as I picked up the first letter. It was my father's handwriting. "Emily, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I should have stopped your mother. You were always the one who carried us, and I let you. There's a savings account in your name at Westfield Bank. It's yours, what little I could set aside for you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to have something honest for once. Dad." My throat closed. Sarah reached out, resting her hand on mine. "He loved you, you know. He just didn't know how to fight her." I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. He chose silence. "And so did you?" she said softly. "Until now." I took a deep breath, folding the letter carefully back into the box. "Not anymore." When I left her house, the sky was clearing, a sharp wind cutting through the lingering rain. I slid the flash drive into my pocket, the metal cold against my palm. Michael's words echoed in my mind. "Once this starts, there's no going back." Good, I thought. I didn't want to go back. Not to the house that was never mine, not to the role I'd been forced to play. This time, I wasn't the fixer. I was the reckoning. I hadn't seen that many Grants in one room since Dad's retirement party, the one where everyone toasted Haley's new art studio, like I hadn't co-signed her lease just weeks before. Now they were gathered again, this time in Aunt Sarah's living room in Bellevue, sipping coffee and pretending not to be terrified. The air smelled like lemon polish and unease. Mom sat stiffly on the floral couch, pearls at her throat like armor. Haley wore oversized sunglasses even though it was cloudy outside. Dad stood by the window staring out like the street might save him. Aunt Sarah stood beside the fireplace, her posture steady, her eyes clear. She'd insisted on hosting after I told her everything. Neutral ground, she'd said. It didn't feel neutral. It felt like a reckoning. I set the manila envelope on the coffee table. The documents inside were neatly stacked: bank records, property transfers, printed emails. Proof that the years of manipulation weren't in my head. Mom's voice cracked through the silence first. "Emily, what is all this? Some kind of stunt?" "No," I said. "This is an intervention. Just not the kind you're used to." Dad's head turned slightly, his shoulders tense. "An intervention," I nodded. "For truth." Haley crossed her legs, the bracelets on her wrist jingling nervously. "You didn't have to drag everyone here for another family drama." I looked straight at her. "I think this one's worth it." Aunt Sarah gestured for me to begin. I opened the envelope, pulled out the first stack, and spread the pages across the table. "These are the records of every dollar I sent you over the last 8 years," I said. "Mortgage payments, medical bills, studio loans, everything." Mom glanced down at the papers, her face tightening. "You were always so generous, sweetheart. You can't hold that against us." I almost laughed. Generosity isn't the problem. Deception is. I slid another document forward. "This is the home equity loan you took out last year. $180,000 co-signed under my name." Haley blinked behind her glasses. "That's insane." "Is it?" I asked, turning the page. "Because here's your signature too, Haley. You signed as a resident of the property, which you weren't. That's fraud." Haley's face went pale. "What? No, I didn't. Dad told me it was just paperwork for taxes." Dad shifted, jaw tightening. "Emily, let's not. Let's," Aunt Sarah cut in, her voice sharp. "Keep going, Emily." I pointed at another highlighted section. "And these transactions here, payments labeled utilities and family support, those match the exact amounts withdrawn from my account every month. You used my money to pay for your illegal loan." Mom's composure cracked, a tremor in her voice. "We were desperate. You don't know what it's like trying to hold a family together." I met her gaze. "You weren't holding it together, Mom. You were patching holes with lies." Her mouth opened, then closed again. Aunt Sarah leaned forward, squinting at one of the documents. "This says the house deed was transferred into the Grant Family Trust, naming Haley as co-trustee." Haley's eyes widened. What? Mom's voice broke. "We thought it would be best for everyone. She has children, she needs stability," I interrupted. "And I don't." Mom's tone sharpened. "You have your career. You're fine." "That's not love, Mom," I said quietly. "That's convenience." The room went still, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock. Dad finally spoke, voice heavy. "Maybe we went too far. We just wanted to protect what was ours." "What's yours?" I said. "Dad, that money came from me. From years of working late, skipping vacations, believing I was helping my family." "You didn't protect anything, you stole it." He flinched as if the word had hit him. Mom whispered, "You're destroying this family." "No," I said. "I'm revealing what you built it on." Aunt Sarah nodded slowly. "She's right, Margaret." Haley stood abruptly, pacing. "You don't understand. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know about the transfers." "Didn't know," I repeated. "Or didn't want to." She froze, her hands trembling. "I thought you could handle it. You always do." "Exactly," I said. "You all counted on that." Aunt Sarah turned toward Mom. "Did you forge these signatures?" Mom bristled. "Of course not. I didn't have to. Emily signed things for us all the time." "Yes," I said, "because I trusted you." Her lips parted, but no words came. I reached into the envelope again and pulled out the USB drive. "There's one more thing." Mom's head snapped up. "What is that A recording?" I said. "From your lawyer's files. January of last year." I plugged it into my laptop, pressed play. At first, there was only the clink of glasses, faint conversation. Then Mom's voice filled the room, smooth and certain. If Emily ever finds out, we'll tell her it was a misunderstanding. She won't fight us. She never does. Haley's voice followed light and smug. She's too responsible to make a scene. That's the beauty of it. The recording stopped. Silence crashed down like a wave. Aunt Sarah straightened slowly. Margaret Mom's eyes darted between us, her face pale. That was taken out of context. Context, I said quietly. You were planning how to lie to me, Haley whispered. Oh my God. Dad's voice came out rough. You recorded this. I didn't, I said. Your lawyer did. Aunt Sarah's eyes stayed on Mom. This is intent, Margaret. You used your own daughter. Mom's voice cracked. You think I wanted it to be this way? Everything I did was for this family. Everything you did was to control it, I said. And when control didn't work, you called it love. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. You'll regret this, Emily. Family is all that matters. Then why did you teach me? It's something you can forge. She pressed her hands to her face, sobbing quietly. Haley sank into her chair, staring at the floor. Dad stood frozen, his mouth a hard line. Aunt Sarah exhaled slowly. I think that's enough pretending for one lifetime. No one moved. I gathered the papers, sliding them back into the envelope. The court date is in 3 weeks, I said. You'll be notified soon. Mom looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. You're taking us to court? I already did, I said. You just haven't been served yet. The words landed like a hammer. The room went silent again. Haley whispered, Please don't do this. I met her eyes. You did this when you signed those papers. I stood, tucking the envelope under my arm. For years you made me believe love meant sacrifice. But I finally learned something. Mom's voice was small. What that love without respect is just control. When I walked out, the air outside hit me like a wave, cool, sharp, alive. The clouds were breaking over the city, streaks of sunlight pushing through gray. I stood at the edge of the driveway, breathing in the wet air. My phone buzzed with a new message from Michael. Michael filed. They'll be officially served by Monday. Be ready. I looked back at the house, the shapes moving behind the curtains. Mom's sobs faint through the glass. Haley clutching her head. Dad standing motionless. Good, I whispered. Let the truth have its turn. Then I walked to my car, closed the door, and drove away without looking back. The sound of rain woke me before the alarm. Soft, steady, familiar. For years that sound meant dread, late-night calls, family drama, guilt that never slept. Now it just meant morning. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the heater. My house. The one that used to hold every unspoken debt, every argument behind closed doors, every lie wrapped in the word family. I stood barefoot by the window, coffee in hand, watching droplets trace silver lines down the glass. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was standing inside someone else's story. A year had passed since the court case. The papers were settled, the judgment sealed, the house deed framed on the wall. The lawyer's voice still echoed sometimes, restitution granted, ownership restored. But the part that mattered wasn't the money or the title. It was waking up in this silence and realizing I didn't owe anyone an apology for existing. The house looked different now. Lighter. The walls were soft white instead of the tired beige my mother had insisted on. The heavy drapes were gone, replaced by linen curtains that let the daylight in. I'd donated most of the furniture, too many ghosts in the cushions, and kept only what felt honest. A wooden dining table, a single sofa, a shelf lined with books, and framed blueprints from my firm. I walked into the kitchen, running my fingers across the counter. The smell of cedar and rain drifted through the open window. My phone buzzed on the counter, a message from Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah, you're awake early. The garden looks beautiful this morning. Your father would have been proud. I smiled faintly and typed back. He would have hated the color, but maybe he'd understand now, she replied with a single heart. Dad had passed 6 months after the trial. The heart attack came quietly, as if he'd been waiting for an ending. He never called after the verdict, but before he died, he sent a letter through Sarah. It was short, shaky handwriting on lined paper. Emily, you were the heart of this family. I didn't protect you from our mistakes, but you protected yourself. That's what makes me proud. I kept it framed beside the house deed. Forgiveness didn't come easily, but I no longer needed it to. I just needed peace. By mid-morning, the rain eased into mist. I put on my jacket and stepped outside, the damp air wrapping around me like a quiet welcome. The garden smelled of live roses, hydrangeas, the faint scent of mint from the herb patch I'd planted in spring. The same roses my mother had pruned with surgical precision were growing wild again, vibrant and untamed. I liked them better that way. Life after Truth had been quieter but fuller. I'd started volunteering at the Seattle Financial Justice Initiative, helping people like me, people who'd been drained by those they trusted most. At first, I told my story anonymously. But when one woman came to me after a workshop, tears in her eyes, saying, "I thought I was the only one," I stopped hiding. I spoke at community centers, universities, even small-town legal clinics. Every time I told the story, I could feel the weight of it lifting a little more. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Turning pain into something useful. Haley had reached out once a few months ago. Her message was simple: "I'm sorry, I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm trying to be better." I never replied, but I didn't delete it either. Some wounds didn't need reopening. It was enough to know she was learning to live with hers. The clock struck 11 when I heard the sound of tires on wet pavement. I turned toward the driveway. A small blue car pulled up. For a moment I thought it was another delivery. Then the driver's door opened and Haley stepped out. She looked different. Softer somehow. Her hair shorter, her clothes simple. Beside her, two small figures climbed out of the back seat, Emma and Lucas, her kids. For a heartbeat I didn't move. Then she lifted a small box from the trunk and walked toward me, cautious but steady. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied. "I didn't want to come uninvited," she said. "But the kids wanted to see where Grandma's roses used to grow." I nodded slowly. "They're still here. Just wilder." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's better." She handed me the box. Inside were old photos, a few trinkets, and Dad's watch, the one I thought was gone forever. "I found these when Mom moved out of her apartment," Haley said. "I thought you should have them." "Thank you," I said quietly. The kids were already exploring the yard, laughing as they chased each other through the rain. Their laughter sounded like something I hadn't heard in years, innocence untouched by history. Haley watched them, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw your interview last month, the one where you said boundaries are a form of love." I looked at her. I meant it. "I didn't understand it then," she said, "but I think I do now." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The rain turned lighter, almost silver in the sunlight, breaking through the clouds. "I'm sorry, Emily," she said finally. "For everything, for what I signed, for what I ignored. I was selfish. And you were right to stop saving me." I exhaled, the tension leaving my chest slowly. "I know," I said. "And I believe you." She nodded, eyes glassy, then smiled through it. "That's more than I deserve, maybe," I said. "But it's enough." We stood there, two sisters in the garden that once belonged to a lie, now blooming into something real. When she left, she hugged me briefly, hesitantly, but it was real. After they drove away, I walked back to the porch, the box still in my hands. I placed Dad's watch on the table beside my coffee, its ticking steady, alive. The sound felt like time forgiving itself. That evening, as dusk settled, I lit a candle in the window. The reflection of the flame flickered against the glass, soft and constant. The air smelled like rain and lavender. I thought about how far I'd come from being erased, to being remembered, from silence, to speech, from guilt to freedom. I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and looked out at the city lights shimmering beyond the trees. Somewhere, I knew my mother was still convincing herself she'd done everything out of love. Maybe that was her truth. But mine was simpler. I'd stopped mistaking control for care. The rain began again, soft against the window. I smiled. For years, I said quietly, I thought revenge was justice. But sometimes the best revenge is peace. the kind they can't take from you. I turned on the lamp, the room glowing warm and golden. If you've ever been the one who gave until you had nothing left, I said, softly. I hope my story reminds you that love doesn't mean surrender. I looked at the camera on my desk, the one I used to record my short stories for the channel. Tell me in the comments if you've been there, I said with a small smile. If you've had to choose yourself after a lifetime of giving. And if you have, I hope you'll like, share, or subscribe, so maybe someone else can find their way back to themselves too. Because sometimes the truest revenge isn't anger, it's peace. Outside, the rain eased, the clouds parting to reveal a faint silvery sky. I raised my glass toward the window, whispering to the reflection that stared back. To beginnings, I said. And this time I meant it.